Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome once more to our training on building your EA Part 2. My name is Nana Obina Alexander. Some of you would know. I'm the senior market analyst and the head educator here at Anzo Capital. Okay, so straight up, I didn't put this disclaimer, but you need to understand that this is for educational purposes. You want to take this and apply it, use it, and anything you learn, definitely you want to test and back test. You don't take anything here at face value. You want to test and back test. What we're doing is just to see what we'll be developing is not the holy grail or anything. You can try and make it work for you, but you want to make sure that you test and back test what you learn. Now, from the last time we did discuss about, the importance of automating your strategy. We also just discussed how it's done. So what we'll actually be doing today is just jump straight to where we were as at the last time. So on the last time, we kind of explained what we wanted to do, because I made mention of the fact that it's very, very important that you simplify your objective. So you want to understand, you want to define what you're trying to do and make it as simple as possible so that it's easy for you to then program it, okay? So you want to understand why you're buying, why you're selling, how you enter and exit the trade, and how you manage the trade. Now, all of those things that you would define, what you want to then do is put in such a form that it will be simple, so that when you're when you're programming your EA, you already know what to do. One thing you don't want to do is, you're in the process of developing you're trying to set up your EA and you're up and down. You don't know, you're walking off head. That might not be the best, because it will mean you might just put parameters wrongly and all. But if you have a simplified form of what you want to do, and then it's easier for you to just, at least you know where you are and what you're trying to do and what is the next step to from where you are to where you want to go. Okay, so what I did before I came live on this class is just design a simple flow chart, right? I designed a simple flow chart for the EA that we discussed. So if you were not in the last session, in the last class, I'll probably employ you to go and watch the video on the last class. But we discussed what we're trying to do. We're trying to do automate moving average trading system. We're using the 5-period and the 12-period exponential moving average, and we're trying to create a trading strategy that takes a buy trade or a sell trade depending on which of the moving average is crossing which. Now, so what I did is just, I wanted to do it live, but I was thinking this is going to take us a little bit of time, so I just quickly did it. And then what I'll do now is explain. You see, it's actually quite simple. Just explain the flowchart. Some of you already understand flowchart concepts. The concept of flowchart. You'd see the concept quite easy. So let me jump straight up to, okay, so this is the flowchart, right? At least the first phase of it. So what you're seeing on your screen here is just, in the most basic form, just a simple diagrammatic representation of what we're trying to do, what conditions need to be met, and if this happens, what then should we do? So if you look straight up, if you look at the screen here, you would notice, you see our first condition, as you can see here, is to check trade condition. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, is there any trade open based on, is there any trade from our EA that is open? So that's what this check trade condition is. Now, when we are optimizing this strategy, you'll see why this is important. So we're checking to see if there's any trade open. Now, if there are two options, well, if there's trade open, there's trade is either going to be open or no trade open. So there's a yes option, that means a trade is open, and then there's a no option, that means no trade is open. Now, in the case where a trade is open, what does it do? Well, you can see it just follows this path and stops. So it does nothing, right? So if a trade is open, it does nothing. Now, if a trade is not open, then it will proceed to the next phase, which is, you can see the arrow. So the first phase, it comes into this decision tree, more or less, or decision shape. And then it looks for, okay, is there a trade open? If there's a trade open, well, it goes through this route. If there are no trade open, it goes down this route. So no trade, the next thing it does is it checks the EA, right? The EMA. So remember, what we're doing is we looked at the market and we said, when price is moving in an uptrend, the EMA or the moving average tend to move below price, right? So if we combine, let's say, the 5-period moving average and the 12-period moving average, if the market is bullish, well, the 5-period moving average would be above the 12-period moving average. However, in a case where the market now starts to maybe shift bearish, what you'll notice is that the 5-period moving average will now come below the 12-period moving average. So if there's a trade open, well, it does nothing. We already have that one set. Well, however, if there are no trade open, it takes the second route. And in the second route, what does it do? It checks the EMA, right? So the 5-period and the 12-period exponential moving average. Now, what does it check? Well, it will look at, is the 5-period moving average crossing above? So I don't know if you can see this properly, but if you look in here, you will be able to see what I'm trying to say. So it's going to make another check. Okay, so when it's a check for the 5-period moving average and the 12-period moving average, what it will do is it will ask itself, is the 5-period moving average crossing above the 12-period moving average? Now, the 5-period moving average is the faster moving average because it has a smaller period. That means it is going to be closer to price than the 12-period. So now this condition is saying, is the 5-period moving average crossing? So that's this thing that looks like this, means is it crossing above, right? So is it crossing above the 12-period moving average? Now, it's also a question, and the answer can either be yes or no. Now, if the 5-period moving average, which in this case is this one, so let's write 5, and this second one down here is the 12-period moving average. Well, it's checking, is the 5-period moving average crossing above? Well, in this particular point here, let's assume this place where I draw my line, they are not crossing above, so it will be a no, right? However, let's assume, so I'm going to draw another drawing here. So let's say the market has been bearish, right, coming down. And so the 5-period moving average is this black one, right? And then let me use another color for the 12-period moving average. And let's say we have the 12-period moving average as this red one, right? Now, when the market begins to shift bullish, so this was a bearish market, when the market begins to shift bullish, what you find is, well, the 5-period moving average, in this case, which was below the 12, will start doing something. Well, to start doing something like this. And then the 12-period moving average will do something like this. Right? Let me draw this. So maybe something like this. Now, what you notice is this. Now, this condition or this question that is being asked here is saying, is the 5-period moving average crossing above the 12-period moving average? Now, well, at this point here, at this junction here, the answer to this question would be a yes, right? So if it checks the market and the 5-period moving average is crossing above the 12-period moving average, the answer to this question here will be a yes, and then it will execute the instruction in this box. And what is the instruction here? Well, open a buy trade at the close of the candle, right? So you see, the whole logic now becomes quite simple. Now, automation is not as complicated as it might seem to be if you just understand how to explain what you're trying to do. Now, so at this particular point here, that's point where they are crossing over, the answer to this question, if the 5-period moving average is crossing above the 12, would be a yes, and then it will execute a buy at the close of the candle. At the close of the candle where that occurs, let's say this is where the close of the candle is, that is where it will execute the buy, right? Now, if the answer is no, and the 5-period moving average is not is not crossing above the 12-period moving average, then it will take this route, right? I know we have a lot of drawings on our screen. I hope you can still understand what I'm trying to do. So if the 5-period moving average is not crossing above the 12-period moving average, then what it will do is it will look toward this direction and take this route. And then it's going to now look into this box and say, okay, if the 5 is not crossing above the 12, then is the 5 crossing below the 12, right? Now, if in a bullish market, that means before the market turns bullish, you should see this changing, this moving average cross, where the slow moving average crosses above the fast, or the fast moving average crosses above the slow moving average. However, in a condition where, in a situation like this here, where the market has been bullish and then is looking to shift bearish, what will happen is that the 5-period moving average would cross below the 12-period moving average and would continue to stay below the 12-period moving average in a bearish market. So at that point where it crosses, what is going to be looking out for? It's going to be looking to sell, right? Now, all of this is just what I'm trying to do is, I'm a very big fan of when you're trying to explain something to somebody, you want to help them understand why they are doing what they are doing, not just doing, the goal for me is to help you understand how to automate your strategy. So you need to understand why you're doing something, because that will then help you to make proper decisions and make proper EAs when you're doing yours. So in this situation, we're looking for a condition, and if one condition is met, we do something, and if the other condition is met, we do something. So in the case where the 5-period or the fast EMA is moving below, moving below the slow moving average, or in this case, the 12-period moving average, but what we do is we execute a sell trade at the close of the candle where that crossover is happening. Now, this whole this flow chart, I'm going to just delete all of this drawing. Now, this whole flow chart is just a very simple explanation as to how we, what we are trying to accomplish, right? Now, what we'll do now is we'll take this explanation, go over to our, our web-based software, and then develop or create this this EA, right? So we're going to create this EA using this same condition. So I'll be coming back here, we'll be looking at it together, and then we'll be developing it together. Now, so what you're going to be needing to create your, automate your strategy without having to code. You can obviously do this using the MQL, MQL language, and you could just write your codes directly. However, not everybody knows how to do that. Not everybody is a programmer. So with FX Dreamer, so I'm going to just, what was this? Can't remember. Well, let's delete this. I don't think, okay, this was one small something I was working on before. Okay, so now with FX Dreamer, the software that you'll be using to automate your strategy is actually called FX Dreamer, right? So let me just copy. I'm going to just copy and paste this here for us. Okay, now obviously you would probably need to pay for it monthly. There's a monthly subscription, there's a yearly subscription. It's available for you. I just posted the link to that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start up a new project, right? We're going to start up a new project. Now, what we're going to do now is go to, when you open the FX Dreamer application for the first time, it's going to look something like this. So let me start from the fresh. It's going to look something like this. Yeah, it's not a complex, it's a very simple web-based software to use. You can see all the things you need to do. You can develop EAs for MT4, you can develop EAs for MT5, and it's quite flexible and powerful in what you can do with it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the builder section, because that's where you will be building our EAs. And then if we want to create a new project, we're going to call this new project. So go on that project, to go to new, would select the type of, so you can build EAs with this. You can also build scripts with this. You can develop on MT4, on the MT5, for the MT5 software trading application as well. So we're developing an EA for the MT4, so we'll leave this to checked, and then we'll name our our EA. So what we're going to just call this is let's call it Anzo. Let's call it test EA, or let's name it something generic. EMA cross. Please keep your mic muted. Who was that? Yeah, so we're going to name this EMA cross over EA. Okay, so once you do that, we'll click on create, and then we've loaded our FX project. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to just spend a little bit of time kind of like explaining how this interface works. So if you look over here, you would see a lot of things. You would see conditions. You would see a lot of things you can do. Don't worry, as time goes on, we'll be playing around with a lot of them. You'd understand how to use them. But we're going to start up very simply. It's just a simple drag and drop. If you want something, you click it, you drag it, you start, connecting dots to it, and then you can develop yourself an EA that works. So very simple and very powerful. All of the heavy lifting has been done, and all of the heavy liftings has been done. So you just drag and drop, use connections. Obviously, you need to modify some few things, but it's actually quite simple and very powerful in the way that it can be used. So now, what are we trying to accomplish? We're going to be referencing our, let's go back to our, so this is, we wrote this one together in our first section, where we try to say, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish, the EMA crossover strategy. So we say, what do we need? Well, we need 2 EMA, the fast EMA, which is the exponential moving average with 5 periods and the 12 period, right? So 5 period exponential moving average and 12 period exponential moving average. Now, in order to execute a trade, then what we're doing is we're going to be looking for a buy. We're going to be looking to buy when the fast EMA crosses above the slow EMA, and we'll be looking to sell when the fast EMA crosses below the slow EMA. Now, we can hard code stop loss and take profits, but I said we're going to use a different scenario in this. For this example, I'll probably allow us to put in a hard code stop loss and take profits. However, in the completion of this particular system, we're going to use the dynamic take profit and dynamic stop loss when we're done building it. That would enable us to capture trends in the markets if and when it does occur. Okay, so we understand what we are trying to do. When we go to our flowcharts, the first thing we want to do is to check for condition. We want to check if there's any trade, right? So we'll go back to our EMA, and then what we do is, click on here. So what we're doing is we're going to check trading conditions. So if you see this box here, this one that says check trading condition, that is what we want to start up with, right? So what we are trying to do is we're trying to check, okay, is there any open trade, right? Is there any open trade? Is there any open trade from our EA? If there's an open trade from our EA, then we don't want to do anything. If there are no open trade, then we want to check, right? And we want to check for the EMA. So then we go here, we click on no trade. So you can see this no trades, right? So what that means is we're just simply checking for trade condition. If there are no trades, that is only when this particular this particular instance will be deployed, right? If there are no trades, then the EA would read this section. So what I'm going to just do is right click, click on edit title, and just go down here and see no trade. We're looking for no trade, whether it's buy or sell. Okay, so done. So firstly, we're looking, okay, is there any open trade? Well, if there's no trade, if there's an open trade, this would not be deployed. However, if there are no open trades, then it will go down to the next step. Now, if we go back here, we'll say, once we check the condition, we want to check for the EA. So what you do is we come back here, we go to conditions. So if you look at this, you see condition and formula. We just drag one, right? We want to check for 2 things. I'm going to drag 2 in this case, something like this. So let's go back here. What we are trying to do is we want to check 2 EAs. 2 indicators. That is the exponential moving average. We want to check for a buy scenario. The 5 period moving average has to be crossing, just as you can see here. For a buy scenario, the 5 period moving average has to be crossing above the 12 period moving average. And in a sell scenario, well, the 5 period moving average needs to be crossing below the 12 period moving average. So we need to impute that such that our EA our advisor can be able to look at that. So under conditions, what I'm going to do here is right click on edit, and I'm just going to name this let's name it EMA buy condition. Okay, so this will be EMA buy condition. Now, what we want to do is, so if you want to edit, if you want to, go in and modify the parameters, just double click on it, right? So what we want to do, so you can see this is where it's powerful. You can see here indicators. There are a lot of things you can check. The candle, you could check indicator, you could check for loop, a lot of things that you can check. So what we want to check is the indicator. What indicators are we looking for? There are a lot of indicators here. There's envelope, there's a lot of indicators, but what we're looking for is the moving average indicator. So let's go down to moving average, right? Moving average indicator. There are multiple types of moving average. There's a simple moving average, there's the exponential, there's the linear weighted, there's the smooth. But what we want for this is the exponential. So we'll drop down and click on exponential, right? Now, the first, we want to look at the 5-period moving average and what's the 12-period moving average. So this is already 5. Let's leave that there. And then what we want to do is we want to check if, so this is where we do the check. If the 5-period moving average is crossing above, you can see this X greater than, meaning is this side crossing above this side? So we're going to check if the 5-period moving average is crossing above. In this case, we're going to use the 12-period moving average over here. We're also going to make this exponential, right? And then if we go under more setting, we want to look at the candle ID as one. So candle ID is we're checking the current candle, the most recent candle, right? That's why we're putting this as one. Now we're using the close price. So the close price of the candle is what we're going to be looking at. Now, if the moving average, there's the 5-period exponential moving average, is crossing above the 12-period exponential moving average, we've set the parameter for the first condition. So if we go back here, you see we're looking for, is the 5-period moving average crossing above the 12-period moving average? In which case, if that is a yes, then we're looking to buy. So we go back here and we're done with this. I'm going to come back and modify this. Now, if you look here, you see that there's a checkbox you can check and uncheck this. That is just so that you can have this, so you can modify, you can play around the moving average, you can play around, modify parameters, even while you've created the EA and while you're trying to deploy it in your strategy tester. Okay, so we're going to just leave that here. And then what we'll do is we'll click on updates, and that one is updated. So we'll connect this to this. And then in this other parameter here, we'll also want to modify this and call this EMA sell, right? So sell condition. So EMA sell condition. Now for the sell, double click. What we are trying to do is we are still looking at the moving average, the 5-period moving average, the exponential of it. We want to look at the most recent candle, so that will be candle ID 1. We want to check if the we are only going to be looking to sell at the point where the 5-period moving average is crossing below, right? So this is going to be X less than below the 12-period moving average in this case. And we're also going to make this exponential. And then we're going to also make candle ID 1. Now, in this, basically, very simple, very straightforward. We're checking the 5-period moving average. We're also checking if it's crossing below the 12-period moving average. And if this condition is true, then what are we looking to do? Well, I'm going to click updates. I'll just drag and drop this here. And so if the 5-period moving average is crossing above, well, click on, we're looking to, we're looking to buy now. And if it is crossing below, we're looking to sell now. So you can just click this, drag and drop. And here you have it. Well, we have a very simple first step, right? A very simple first step of the EA is done. Now, if we go back here, what you notice, we've actually completed our flowchart. We check for trade condition, as you can see here. So check trade condition. The first thing we check if there are no trade. If there's an open trade, it would not deploy. It will not come into this area, right? So, but if there are no trades, that is when it will now come into this area. And then what will it do? Well, we'll go back here. We're going to check both the 5-period moving average and the 12-period moving average. And we're going to see if the 5-period moving average is crossing above the 12. So that's what we did here. We are checking for buy condition, right? So this is the buy condition. We're looking if the 5-period moving average is crossing above the 12. And you can see this is our crossing above. We're looking at the exponential moving average. We're looking at the most recent candle. And if that is true, we'll execute the buy. On the other hand, if the 5 is crossing below, and as you can see here, if the 5-period moving average is crossing below the 12-period moving average, then we are looking to sell. Now, as a personal best practice, one thing I always like to do wherever possible is to set variables. Now, for example, what I mean is, if I'm looking to, when it comes to developing EAs or building EAs, it usually requires a lot of testing. So sometimes, it might not be the 5-period moving average that might work. It might be, let's say, the 20 or the 15, or it might be, I might want to deploy it on several things. So instead of having to come back and, adjust every single parameters, because now this is a very, very simple EA, right? They're just 1, 2, 3, 4 connections, right? When we're building really complex EAs, we could have hundreds, dozens of connections, and a lot of parameters might be, you will be needing a parameter here, would check this, would check this, would check this. I don't want to have to be going into all of them. Let's say I want to, instead of using 5 and 12, let's say I want to use 10 and 20. I don't want to have to be going into all of them to change 10 and 20. What I like to do is build a constant, right? So those of you who are familiar with, those of you who are familiar with, what do you call it? Programming, C++, Java, whatever it is, you understand what I mean by building variable. But basically, we're just defining a variable that we can call at any time. So what I like to do is, the variable type would be, for the first one will be int, that's integer. And I'm going to call this EMA, or let's just call it fast underscore EMA. And then the value of it would be 5, right? And I'm going to add another one, and this is going to be also an integer, and it's going to be slow underscore. Now you can name it whatever it is you like. So just I like to name it, and I'm going to name this one. This is going to be 12, right? Now, I click on updates, and that is done. So I can go back. Now, if I go back into this, what I can do is, instead of using 5 and 12 here, I could just change this to fast, right? I could just change this to fast and slow. Okay. So there's no big difference. It's actually the same thing. The difference is, if I want to change, what do you call it? If I want to change the moving average period that I'm looking at, instead of having to go into all of them to change it, right? So this is going to be fast, and also this is going to be slow. Now, instead of going to all of, because remember, this is just 2, it's only 2 of them I have here, so it doesn't feel like a big deal. But imagine if this is a lot of, if this is a very complex project, and there are lots of things where I call the same functions. Instead of having to go into all of them to change it, all I just need to do is go to constant and change the value, and it will reflect across board. Okay. Now, remember what we did here is we've checked trade condition. If there are no trade condition, we look to see if the buy condition is met. If the buy condition is met, then it buys at the close of that candle. If the sell condition is met, it sells at the close of that candle. Now, what are we selling? How much volume are we selling? What is our stop loss? What is our take profit? Okay, so we can also modify those parameters. We can also adjust, impute our hard code stop loss and take profits in this case. Now, let's say, for example, we decide that, okay, what we're going to do is, if our buy condition is met, so let me use my, okay. So let's say the market has been bearish, right? So we're having a bearish market, and then we have the 5-period moving average, and also, let's call this, and also let's say the 12-period moving average as well, moving. like so. And then at this point, you could see where we have a, where they change over. Let's say the markets now breaks over. So, but this is at the point, this is the point where we have that crossover. Now, when we execute a buy based on our instruction that we give to our EA here, it's supposed to execute a buy at this point. Now, if you execute a buy at this point, what is the volume that it will buy with? And then where would it take profit? What will be our stop loss? Now, this is all the beauty about having to build your EA yourself, because then you can impute it however it is that you're based on your own trading style. So now let's say, based on your back testing and looking at this, you've seen that, okay, whenever this happens, market tends to run, let's say 20 pips up, and then maybe maybe market likes to run 20 pips up, and then maybe you want to keep your stop loss 10 pips below, right? Now, you can impute that. You can also say, okay, you can also look at something like, okay, maybe I want to put it below the envelope, so you can have another indicator. This is where you can have multiple indicators. You can have another indicator, and then the envelope of that, you can play around with a lot, but you can put your stop loss, let's say at 10 pips. You can put your take profit at 20 pips, right? Now, if we're doing that, right? Remember, I said this is not how I'm going to go about it. We're going to use the dynamic stop loss and take profit. I wouldn't be doing that now or here or whatever. But here we're going to just show how we would do so if we were using a hard code stop loss and take profit. Now, on that buy, what do we want to do? Well, you can use fixed volume. So I could just go here and say, what I want to do is, once that condition is met, well, buy 0.01, right? The lot size that will be used will be 0.01. You could also maybe 0.2, however it is that you want to do it, entirely up to you. Now, you can see stop loss mode, fixed stop loss. Here you just impute. So if you want to use 10 pips stop loss, take profits, let's say 20 pips, and then updates, right? So your buy parameter is met. If the market checks, if the EA checks no trade is open, it checks the buy condition and the buy condition is met. What it's going to do, well, it's going to update, it's going to place a buy trade using the parameters that we've just set. So what it's going to do is going to buy 0.2, that's going to be the volume. And once it executes the buy, our stop loss will be 10 pips below because it's a buy, and our take profit will be 20 pips above instantly. So whenever the market goes and hit any of them, we're good. Now, in the case of a sell, you'd also do the same thing. So we go into it. Let's say we want to also make this 0.2, stop loss 10 pips, take profit 20 pips, right? And we update it and we're done. So once this condition is met, it will check. If it's a buy condition, it will buy 0.2 pips, place stop loss 10 pips below, place take profit 20 pips above. In the case of a sell, it will execute the sell, place stop loss 10 pips above, place take profit 20 pips below. And it will keep on doing this. Now, obviously, it will keep, if it's a buy condition that is met, it will execute the buy, it will place your stop loss, it will look to take you for profit. And that one, once that one is done, it will be waiting for the parameter to meet. So let's say in this particular instance, based on this that we just have here, well, what will happen is, let's say we enter a buy at this point, and this is our stop loss, and this is our take profits. Well, remember, the moving average will still be below, right? So would not be in a trade, would have taken profit already here. Sorry. So would have already taken profit here. So what will happen is, every single time the EA looks at the chart, it will say, is the 5-period moving average crossing above the 12? No. All of these places, the 5 is not crossing above the 12, it's already above it, right? And so there will be no trade until, let's say this changed to a sell, and then the 12 starts crossing above the 5, right? So that is where it will now look to place a sell. So while this is good, and why these setups would make you profit, at least based on this, it's not that flexible. It doesn't give us much room, because we might get into a trade, we're taking 5 pips or however pips we set, and the market continues to run, and maybe it doesn't come back for the next 2 days or 3 days, there'll be no trade on our EA because no conditions actually are met, right? So I wouldn't be covering that in this session. I think I've covered a lot for free, open to all. In the next session, in the next training, which will actually be next week, I will be optimizing this, and I'll also be deploying it and testing it. I'll show you guys how to back test it, how to download your EA, how to test it, and how to back test it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to test this our EA here. We'll see how it performs, and then we're going to optimize it, right? So we'll test this EA using hard-coded stop loss and take profit and see whether it makes us money. And then we will now use dynamic stop loss and take profits, right? And then see whether that one works even better. So remember, the goal is to always optimize, right? There's no perfect EA, there's no perfect trading system. Let's say you have a system that wins, that has a win ratio of, let's say, that has a win ratio of 50%. While that is not bad, the goal is to see if you can make it 60% or 65% or 70% or 80%. The more, the better. So what we're going to do is we'll test this, the next class. We'll then look to optimize it. Instead of using hard stop loss and take profits, we'll use dynamic stop loss and take profits. And then after that, we will then even optimize this even further. So instead of just picking any trades, we'll probably look for trends in the market. If the market is trending in a particular direction, we'll look for that particular, we can add another EA, let's say 50 period moving average or 200 period moving average to serve as the overall trend, and look for buys in an overall buy market and look for sells in an overall bearish market. Okay, so basically that would be the much that I'll be taking today. So just before we round up for this one, what I'm going to do now is remember we used like I mentioned, I don't like to impute hard-coded take profit or stop loss. What I want to do is, instead of using, so remember here in our buy and sell now, right? In our buy and sell now, what we did was, if this would just click, would you click? So instead of using 0.02 as our volume there, I'm going to go and make a constant, right? So we're going to add a new constant here. This is going to be double. So the variable type is going to be double. That means it can have a decimal place. And then we're going to call this lots, right? We're going to call this lots, and we're going to make this 0.2. So that anytime, even if I want to change something in the EA, I can just come here, change it, and that'll be fine. So after that is done, I'll go into the buy now. Why are you not clicking? It doesn't want to. Okay, so change this to, instead of 0.2, make this lots, click on updates, and then same thing here. I'm not sure why this one doesn't want to open, but basically do the same thing here and make that lots. Whenever it comes up, I will be doing that. Okay, so what we've done now is we've successfully created the simplest EA that we can possibly do. And what we'll do from here going forward is we'll try optimize it until the result seems fair and better. Okay, so thank you very much. I will be taking your questions now. I know we've covered a little bit, anyway, not too much, but I'm sure some people would have questions. So I'll take your questions now. And remember, I will be uploading this training video on the YouTube channel, and you can always go back and watch it and watch the first one as well. So remember, going forward, this is the last of the open to all. This is the last of the free to all, at least as far as the robot EA is creating your EA is concerned. There'll be more, I think about 5 to 6 more modules of this course where we'll develop more EAs, build more sophisticated EAs. The basic idea is for you to have the concepts to build and automate your own system. Okay, so you don't want to miss, right? You don't want to miss those classes with me and also with Mr. Iken as well. So remember, to get access to it, definitely, I'm sure everybody should have an account to Untitled Capital. All you want to do is fund your account at least a minimum of $100, and that would give you access to join me in my Telegram groups. You'll be able to join me in my trading trainings, weekly trainings, and also join me in the creation of the EAs and how we'll do that together. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed the training so far. And if you have questions, now will be the time to just type in your questions in the chat box.